Hello, hello. I hope you all enjoyed your starters or are still enjoying them. We are going to continue with the next two sets of awards. The first award, I feel like I need a glass and a little knife. Okay, there we go. Thank you, everyone. The next award is for Outstanding Contribution to Accounting and Finance Education. And this will be introduced by Barbara Flood and by Greg Stoner.
Good evening. Dick Wilson is a recipient this year of an Outstanding Contribution Award to Accounting and Finance Education. Sadly, Dick passed away on the 19th of January this year. He had been notified that he was a recipient of this award just a couple of days before he died, and we're delighted that the news gave him great pleasure. I'm delighted that Dick's brother Paul is here this evening and will receive the award on behalf of Dick's family. As many of you know, Dick spent a significant part of his career as Professor of Business Administration and Financial Management at Loughborough University. And prior to joining Loughborough, he held professorships at Keele University, Queen's University Belfast and Nottingham Trent, as well as many visiting professorships at universities around the world. Dick, during his career, made an outstanding contribution to the discipline of accounting and to the community of accounting education academics in the UK. Among many things, he served on the executive committee of the British Accounting Association, the forerunner of BAFA, for over a decade. He was on the executive committee of the Conference of Professors of Accounting and Finance and served as chair of the Committee of Heads of Accounting, which is now CDAF. He was also a founding member of the Consultative Advisory Group of IFAC's International Accounting Education Standards Board, and he represented and was a member of many more committees, both in the UK and further afield. Dick received many accolades during his career, including a Lifetime Achievement Award from BAFA in 2007, and was also elected a Fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences in 2012. The award that we're presenting this evening recognises specifically Dick's outstanding contribution to accounting and finance education. And he is a very worthy recipient of this award, for as a champion for the cause of accounting education, Dick was without equal. Dick was passionate about accounting education research and wrote or edited more than 50 books, book chapters, and many other, including many journal articles concerning accounting education. But more than just being an outstanding individual scholar, Dick was a trailblazer and leader in terms of community building and institutional building. He drove numerous initiatives to create the architecture for the growth and recognition of accounting education as a field of research. And I want to particularly mention two contributions by way of illustration. Firstly, he founded the first special interest group of BAFA, which is the Accounting Education SIG. This SIG brought together the accounting educators, emerging researchers, members of the profession, and accountants from industry as well, creating a network and community of people with a shared interest in the development of effective accounting practitioners for the future. We're delighted, of course, that the SIG is still thriving today. Secondly, in 1992, Dick founded the journal Accounting Education, an international journal, to disseminate the findings from the emerging body of accounting education research. He served as the sole editor of the journal for over 20 years, overseeing, with his inimitable attention to detail, the publication of hundreds of peer-reviewed journal papers. Today, the journal continues to flourish. I think we can safely say that Dick has left a significant legacy to academia. He was a change maker, an innovator, a trailblazer, and a force of nature. And his work will live on through all of us who benefit from his wisdom and guidance. None of us who knew Dick will ever forget his enthusiasm, drive, and leadership, or his conviction that we as educators have a responsibility to our students to make their education something truly meaningful that will remain with them throughout the rest of their lives. Thank you.
I'm not Dick, as you see, but I'm a lookalike. I just want to say two things. First of all, Dick wrote to me when he'd been notified about being chosen for this award, and the only term I could say to describe the tone of his letter was chuffed to bits. If you're not from Yorkshire, you might not understand that. But the other thing is, I'm also standing in on behalf of Jill, who is Dick's widow now, who was invited to receive the award. But in fact, she's still very fragile. But for those of you who know Jill, she does want to keep in touch. It's just at the moment, she's just not up to it. But thanks ever so much for the award on behalf of my fabulous brother.
Okay, so it's now my pleasure to announce the other awardee this year, who is Professor Alan Sangster. I would be surprised if there aren't many of you here, if there are many of you here who don't know Alan. Alan has told me very specifically not to say too much, and for a change, I think I might actually obey the instruction on this account. But Alan has been part of the accounting education community for a very long time. He had one of the first had a paper published in the first edition of Accounting Education. He's been chair of the Accounting Education SIG. He's been secretary of the SIG. He's been a member of the SIG for a very long time, and he tells me, and I have no evidence to dispute this, but that he's been to every Accounting Education SIG ever run. And I suspect it's true. In fact, I'm sure it's true. So, and Alan has, publications in all sorts of areas, particularly now accounting history too, but many of those are related to the accounting education field. So I have great pleasure in announcing Alan Sangster, who as typically is talking to somebody else.
Thank you very much, Greg. That was very memorable, and I appreciated every word. I'm very pleased and honoured to be here, and for those that decided I should be, I am doubly grateful. But I would like to say one thing above all others. The reason I am here is Dick Wilson. Those of you that never met Dick, don't know who he was, or don't know what he did, Barbara covered part of it. He mentored so many people. He created professors like magic. He turned people who didn't know how to do anything academically right into people that cared, and he really wanted professors to profess. He kept telling me, professors profess. Now, I don't think they do anymore. Professing, in Dick's words, was helping other academics become professors. We are far too focused on ourselves now, and I would love to go back 30 years to when Dick Wilson taught me how to be an academic and then taught me how to be a professor once I was a professor. And this community needs people like that. And I'm praying for the next Dick Wilson to walk through the doors and show us all how to do it. Thank you very much.
And we have one final award before our main course, but we will have various others after the main course. Could I ask Stewart Smyth to come on stage to introduce the first Lifetime Achievement Award? Thank you very much.
Cheers, thanks, Dan. I find this a bit strange, but also a huge honour to be introducing the first winner of our Lifetime Achievement Awards here tonight. He's a friend, or a colleague, and a very dear friend of mine, and it's Professor Bill Lee from the University of Sheffield. Bill, we can kind of go through the histories of what our colleagues have done and so on, and I do want to point out that actually Bill was did his PhD and his undergraduate work at the University of Bath. He did his PhD thesis was on the cost conflict of flexible management. And then from that, in the early 1990s, joined the University of Sheffield in 1999 and is basically a lifer since. Right? And in lots of ways, what Bill has done at the University of Sheffield actually epitomizes what we were talking about earlier today, both in terms of the Sheffield School, the ideas about actually challenging perceived norms and wisdoms around accounting, looking at accounting as a social science, and crucially, as one of the contributors mentioned earlier in the discussion, actually critiquing what we do and what we see is happening in terms of the status quo. Bill's written and published over 50 books, 50 journal articles and books. He's co-edited books. Some of you will know probably the evergreen real-life guide to accounting research that Bill co-edited with Chris Humphreys while Bill was still a lecturer at Sheffield. But and rather than go on with a kind of list of Bill's other achievements, including actually his contribution to BAFA, actually being a member of the executive committee of CPAF as well, I wanted to try to get to some of the essence of the man, what he's achieved, and crucially as well, pick up on two things that were brought up by our keynote speakers yesterday, with Lee and Neve, and also I think Trevor Hopper made one of these points as well in the discussion. Right? Lee's point, your priorities are not the Dean's priorities, or actually even better, it's the other way around. The Dean's priorities are not your priorities as academics. Right? And Neve taught us about and stressed the point yesterday about actually being a good colleague, being collegiate, and standing with the people who are around you in your community. Right? And Trevor talked about it in terms of saying, find your tribe, stay with your tribe, build your tribe, because they'll look after you, right, at different times. And I think those three phrases, when I think about them, actually, they perfectly sum up my experience with Bill Lee. I'm already getting told to shut up about this, so I will finish this brief story on it. Right? Bill, when I started, Bill was head of department at the University of Sheffield in 2014. Right? He'd been there for 2 years, and I kind of got to know him, got to know his outlook a little bit, and I was kind of thinking, Bill, why are you head of department? You know, you're a bit of a thorn in the side of management. Well, the previous dean actually told me that Bill was a pain in the arse, but he always actually had something interesting to say in executive meetings. Right? And what Bill's response to me was, I'm standing up there and I'm implementing what I learned as a shop steward and a trade union rep in the manufacturing and engineering plants in Northampton in the 70s and the 80s. My job as head of department is to look after the staff in the department, to get the resources so as they can actually grow and develop. Right? And that, I think, is the testimony and the big standing that Bill's had in Sheffield and actually as well in our community. So, Bill, I'm delighted that you've got this award.
I really don't know how to follow that. Thank you, Stewart. Thank you also to the members, trustees and officers at BAFA for this award. It's very much appreciated. I feel very honoured by it. I also feel very humbled. I'm a migrant from another discipline, and I recall being an Erskine visitor at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch a few years ago, and Christopher Napier was there at the time, and we had a chat about everyone within the community has a lot, or each has a story about others that have helped them. Now, I have a whole range of stories. Earlier, I was chatting with Richard McVie, and when Richard was chair of the research board for the ICAW, and Des Wright was the secretary, they trusted somebody whom they didn't know to host a big conference, which was really quite helpful in developing my career. There were people who came along in terms of Chris Humphrey, who helped me to develop a research and teaching profile, and Dave Owen, who gave me my first permanent job at Sheffield. And then people like John Cullen, David Hild, and Ron Hodges, who's here tonight, pushed me forward around different things. And then when I got the opportunity to do what Stewart developed, what Stewart alluded to, it was a case of good people came along and helped re-establish the Sheffield tradition at Sheffield. And yes, it's about some of the things which Xu Xing said with regards to sustainability, but it's also been about helping to express the voice of people who are often ignored in accounting research. So Stewart's work around social housing, for example, some of the work that Jim Haslam was doing in terms of employees, Dave Yates' work around different forms of accountability, etc., challenging the status quo in good ways. So thank you to all of them for providing me with the opportunities and support, and thank you once again for this award.